Hey, so welcome to another episode of the Best Small Business in the World podcast with Matt Fitzsimmons over there and Sturdy McKee. Um,
Over there.
sorry. Our topic today, we're going to talk about mindset, okay, entrepreneurial mindset, and specifically curiosity. Um, Matt, go run with it. What do you think?
Well, it's funny because I was driving along in the car the other day. I was thinking, and I just had lunch with a client of mine, Aaron, and he's a very successful businessman. And I was like, I wonder what other people could take lessons just by just observing Aaron and
Mhm.
the way he rolls and what he does and that sort of thing. And I thought he's got a mindset, which it's actually the mindset that makes him successful. And so then I thought to myself, I wonder how many other people would benefit from knowing or having a conversation, hearing a conversation around your mindset as a business owner, as an entrepreneur. What is the mindset of a successful one? So then, me being me, I looked at all the rest of my clients and sort of look at the commonalities between all of the really successful ones, and equally not just looking at the successful ones, but actually looking at the ones who weren't successful and actually drawing a contrast between the two, because there
Mhm.
is a contrast.
Yeah,
As you
there
know,
is.
yeah,
Absolutely, there is. And I think mindset's one of those things that we hear a lot about it. It seems kind of nebulous and soft, and we might even
it's
know or think
fluffy.
that right. So we think we might even know or think that we have to change it, but we don't.
Mm,
What we're changing to is kind of invisible. We don't know what that is. We don't know. How do we even know when we get there? So what I'm excited about is
mm,
what you started talking about, like in prep for this, is actually starting to share with people some things that they can actually do and start to think about and really incorporate in to make a little bit of a mindset shift, kind of incrementally, right? So yeah, let's look at the examples,
yep.
but I like the curiosity component really is compelling for me. What do you mean by that?
Mm. Well, and I use that as a contrast, right? So I'll give you.
Hmm.
I've spoken about Aaron, who is really an intellectually curious guy, and so he does concrete resurfacing, right? And he's always curious about new products and new techniques because he puts coatings on top of concrete, and they're for a specific purpose. Maybe you've got a machine that needs to be on a perfectly flat, within a hundredth of a millimeter accuracy piece of concrete or whatever. He's the guy that does that, and so he's naturally just his default setting is curiosity. Um, but to contrast with him, I have a guy I used to work with years ago who, fortunately for him, he sold a business and made a fortune. He has since lost that fortune, and he is the yin to Aaron's yang, if you will. he is. He wasn't curious. He was moderately hardworking, but it's those two words that get in the way of growth, which is "I know," and they were the two words
Yeah.
I heard from him all the time. I know, I know, I know.
I saw a conversation actually on Twitter where somebody's like, I'm amazed my 4-year-old knows everything. you know, yeah, we've got
Yeah,
to break that mindset for sure. And by the
ah,
way, knowing and doing are also two entirely different things.
yeah. But it's that if you go back to Aaron, just using him as the example, he
Yeah.
is so curious about his the technical side of his job, and he's technically amazing. But also, he's curious about running a business and structure of a business and hiring the right people and getting rid of the wrong people. And he's always curious to know, is there a better way? I wonder what else we could do. I wonder, which is a whole lot better than I know, I know, I know.
Mm, yeah.
So uh, um,
So what does that
did,
do for him, being curious and asking those questions?
I think what it does for him is it allows him to be really open and like, so he's about 6'5". He's a big guy.
Mm,
And he just when he walks in a room, he's got a bit of presence, and so he walks in there and he goes, "I wonder who's in the room." It's kind of his default setting, and I wonder who I know, and I wonder, and it's that curiosity, it's that Yeah, it's that wonder about, I wonder what's going on. I wonder what else we could do. I wonder if there's a better way of doing things. And the intellectual exercise of wondering that says a couple of things to me anyway. One of which is I don't know all of the answers to all of the questions. And
Right.
so if I don't know, then I should maybe be curious about what else I can find out. And so again, that curiosity, that openness to being, to being taught something, to learn something.
Well, that's almost a tactical thing. I'm thinking about, affect and mood and all the other things when you're going into a room with a bunch of other people or into a new setting or something like that. And stopping to think about, to say, I wonder who's here. I wonder what's going to happen today. I wonder what cool ideas am I going to hear? I wonder whatever. That's a mindset shift right there.
Mm, it is. Um, and he has a real degree of humility. Um, he's a I actually met him doing triathlons. I did Ironman back in 2012, and he did it. He actually bought my bike off me and did it the year later on the same bike as me. Um, he had the seat post further up.
Yeah.
He's a bit taller than me, but yeah, I met him through there, and he always impressed me as a guy. And then we joined up as client and that sort of thing. Um, but he's always been the guy who sits there and goes, "Well, I've got this new turbo trainer, or I've got this new thing, and I'm training on it. I wonder how it's going to work." Um,
Mhm.
and he drives it. He sort of drives a really fine line between doing what he knows will work, but being curious about what else could do the job better, faster, cheaper, and all that sort of stuff.
Well, that's a great way to prioritize in your business too. If you've got something that's working really well, a process, a system, a player, a team, whatever, you don't really mess with that. But you go looking at the things that aren't getting you the results that you're hoping for, and then being curious about new ways to do the process. Everybody's heard the adage, well, that's the way we've always done it. And, we talk about how bad that idea is.
Yeah,
That's kind of a version of I know. Don't tell me a different way, right? Not being
yeah,
curious. Um, but yeah,
mm,
reinventing those processes, well, you do this in strategy days with your clients, right?
yeah.
Let's revisit our VHAG. Let's look at our 3-year goals. Let's update those. Is this really where we still want to go? You know, and then challenging people around that framework so that they can plan the next 90 days.
What's really interesting about strategy when you look at this as a mindset is also the world's changed significantly over the last 3 years. Like it's changed massively. And if you
Pick,
were,
pick a time frame, Matt. The last few
yeah,
weeks.
exactly.
It's
Yeah.
like last decade, last whatever. Yeah.
But more change has happened since the start of COVID around the world than there has been, and certainly in my time.
You
Um,
want to hear something scary?
Go on, man. Tell
Dude,
me, tell me, tell me.
I was just reading an article and this guy was kind of projecting out and saying most people aren't ready for the rate of change that's coming. That we've been in this
Wow.
rapid change cycle. I mean, and really, if you stop to think about it for a minute and pick a couple milestones. What was it? The touch screen on your phone, right? That wasn't that
Yeah,
like 2011 or 2010, somewhere right in there.
something
I
like
mean,
that. Yeah.
when you start anchoring it to events that we take for granted now,
Mm,
it becomes you start appreciating the rapidity of change. And what he was saying was, put your seatbelt on because change is about to accelerate by a factor of at least four. And he's talking about
wow.
chips and AI and technology, but also the implications for society, for all these other things. The rapidity of change is going to only get faster. And
Mm,
yeah, so what we learn today may not, there are certain things that will be applicable. This is why some people are really focused on, psychology and mindset, being curious,
yeah.
communication, able to interact with other people, because that's not going to change as much. We're humans.
Mm.
We're not going to change at the same rate as the stuff around us.
Well, I think
But
there'll always be a desire to interact with other humans, won't there?
mhm, well, there'll always be a demand for status or satisfaction or love, or there are all these pieces and parts that are going to. I mean, they've existed for thousands of years and they will continue to exist, right? but in a very, very rapidly changing environment. So I like where you're going with the mindset idea of being open and curious. Um, what else? What else helps business owners?
I think resilience, and as you mentioned earlier, mate, it's a word that's bandied around in a lot of different contexts. But I think in the
Mhm.
context of business, it's around your ability to have a crack at something, and if it doesn't go well, you stand up, you dust yourself off, and you keep moving forward. Um, and because by virtue of the fact that you're in business, you will fail. You'll
Right.
do something that isn't the way it's supposed to get done, and that's cool. And as long as you're open to learning about that, and you just stand up, dust yourself off, and away we go again.
Yeah.
And I think
Yeah. Exactly.
that's, if I look at Matt, the other guy who was the contrast with Aaron, um, he would be down for weeks if something didn't quite go perfectly to plan. Not that he was planning particularly well at all, but if something didn't go to plan, he would be down for weeks. And Aaron would sit there and go, "Oh, well, won't do that again." What was it?
Hmm.
Edison discovered like
Right.
1800 ways of not making a light
To
bulb.
not make. Right. Right. Right.
So
Yeah.
same sort of mindset.
That's great because I've run into that, particularly with some of the really successful people I've worked with at Thai, um, the Thai SoCal organization, an entrepreneur organization down there. Um, but we tried a couple of things internally. We tried an accelerator program. We tried a kind of a kickoff seed, uh, idea concept to first customer thing. And what I wanted to plan this out. I wanted to really market it when it didn't get immediate traction. I wanted to push harder. I wanted to keep selling it. I wanted to keep marketing. And some of them were like, they don't want it. Like, who's they? Like, well, I don't
Mm,
know. Everybody we've talked to, they don't want it. Let's move on. Let's go. We're done. And they would
mm,
close it down, chalk it up as a lesson way quicker than I was used to. And at first
okay.
I got frustrated with that, right? I'm like, well, no, we haven't given it a long enough time to go. And they're like, no, they're looking for, and these are some people who've really hit some home runs, right? Done some really big things. They
Mm,
are looking for the path of least resistance, but they're doing it in a very rapid fashion, and they're trying lots of different things. So yeah, if 9 out of 10 things are going to fail, their philosophy is more like, well, let's do 10 things in 3 months, not 10 things over 10 years, because we need to get
doesn't
to.
that make so much sense though?
It does when you
It
get a
just makes up.
little. Yeah, but when it was my baby and I'm carrying the project and it gets shut down, then there's a tendency to get a little emotional about it, right? And to be a little
Sure.
determined. And determination's another piece of mindset that I think is important, but they were moving on quicker. They were determined about succeeding. They weren't determined that we were going to force this one thing onto people. So I think there's this
Mm,
distinction too around the determination piece
mm.
and what that
There's
means.
certainly something in there about determination, mate. Like, who do you know who's been successful? You know, even the most talented people in the world put in the work. I remember reading about and seeing a
Right.
lot about Michael Jordan. They said he was the most talented guy, but yeah, okay, sure, he had talent, he had some talent, but he worked the hardest. Kobe Bryant worked the hardest. That's the commonality. Is these guys are determined to a level of determination which is pretty frightening, to be
Yeah.
fair.
Well, yeah. I mean, Jerry Rice was known for that as well. Like he was the first one there and the last one to leave, even when he was being called the greatest wide receiver to ever play the game. And I think you see that over and over again with people at the top who really stand out. There's Harsha Bogle in here we'll go real international for a minute. He's a cricket announcer in India, right? And he did this great talk on attitude versus talent. And the point was that once you get to a certain level, you know, a lot of these athletes particularly have been the most talented person in their team, their league or whatever for a long time and growing up and getting older and stuff. But once they get to a certain level, that professional level, there's a lot less variation in talent. And that's where the attitude and the
Mm,
mindset and the work ethic starts to really differentiate. People, are you willing to put in the time, the effort, and the attitude? Is your attitude matching? Um, I heard
mm,
since we're talking mindset, right, and openness, Steve Young was giving a talk to a group of entrepreneurs here in San Francisco a while back, a few years ago, and he had, after retiring from football, he had tried to start his own businesses. he was talking to this group of 200 people in the room going, what you guys are doing is really, really hard. It's so hard that I gave up. That's why I'm in private equity now. Let other people run it and invest because and dude, this is Steve Young, right? He's won Super Bowls. Now, everybody forgets he started in Tampa. Things weren't going so well, right? And I don't know if you know football, but I grew up in Tampa and the Bucks were the worst team in football for a long, long, long time. But anyway, when he came to
Okay.
San Francisco, he followed Joe Montana. And, Joe Montana is, he's won 3 Super Bowls and 4 to 6 division titles and, Hall of Famer dude, right? He follows Joe
Everybody
Montana.
knows Joe Montana.
Yeah, I mean, even if don't follow NFL, you know who Joe Montana is, right? So that's the act Steve Young has
Absolutely,
to
yeah.
follow. And he was talking about how he was so frustrated and so mad. He would hit a guy with the ball and they would drop it, and he was just really not getting the success he wanted. And what he said was that was the mindset shift. Okay, was when he decided it's not their fault. None of it's their fault. If they can't catch the ball and throwing that way, I have to figure out a different way to throw it. If they can't run the route or get to the spot I need them to get to, I need to figure out a different spot for them to be in. I need to accommodate all the people and players around me. I need to adjust. And when he did that, everything changed, right? And suddenly he was winning championships and all. But it didn't happen for
So
him
you're talking
until
about ownership, isn't it?
absolutely, absolutely, and realizing that if I'm going to blame other people or I'm going to the mindset of they're not doing their job or they're not he's like it wasn't about that and he's like right or wrong it didn't matter because we weren't winning and we weren't achieving what we needed to and ultimately when I took on the
Mm.
leadership of the team and decided I was going to figure out a way for us to succeed, um, that's when everything changed for him, for the team, for all of
And he had some big boots to fill.
it. Yeah, you too. It's a tough act to follow, right? But and a
There's
few
a
people
really cool
followed after
quote,
that
which
didn't.
I think ties in with
What's that? What's the quote?
that. There's this really cool quote, which I think ties in with what you're saying really well. And I'm not sure who it is. I'm not sure who I can give credit to for it, but it says, when my team does well, I look out the window. When my team doesn't do so well, I look in the mirror. Now, I'm not sure who said it, but when you look at that, it's like, if something doesn't go well, I look at myself for how could I have done something different? And they take ownership of whatever it is. And
Right.
then as soon as they do well, they look at their team and go, don't I have a team of stars that have helped this, that have made this thing happen? What a level of humility.
Well, and that's yeah. When my team does well, I do well, right? I've never understood that with managers, and it's part of the reason I use coaches as an example so much of the time is when the team wins, the coach wins. The coach looks better. There are a lot of people in kind of the corporate world and institutional world and all where it almost feels like the manager doesn't want their players to succeed, right? There's this dysfunctional relationship.
Mm.
They want all the glory, but they don't want them to get it. Well, we were talking about Joe Montana. Well, Bill Walsh was the coach, right? Bill Walsh is a Hall of Fame coach. Bill Walsh, would he be Bill Walsh without Joe Montana and Jerry Rice, and Roger Craig and Ronnie? I mean, there's a whole list of people, right? But he
Sure.
elevated those players. Steve Kerr right now is another great example, right? The Warriors, you've got Steph Curry, Klay Thompson, you've got these people in the spotlight, and there are people who kind of poo-poo Steve Kerr's, you know, management abilities and coaching abilities, saying that, well, he's not doing anything, he just has the right team. Well, if that were the case, there are talented players all over the NBA. Why are the Warriors having continued success repeatedly, right? There's something higher. I mean, it's not just Kerr, right? It's the entire leadership team. But
That's that whole team of champions versus champion team, though, isn't it? That's that. You're like, we're delving. I'm probably a little bit off topic, but it's you can have a team of superstars, but it doesn't make them a superstar team. And I mean, and you know what? So I've got an example of the US basketball team, 2004.
oh
Um,
yeah,
on paper, it was the most untouchable team in the world. Like, every single name was like a poster on a kid's wall, every single name. And they got bounced really, really early. And everyone was sort of like, ooh, crikey, what happened there, mate? it's a bit of a turn up for the works. And this is, an amazingly talented group of people who just weren't bothering to play with each other. They were playing for themselves and for their own personal glory and that sort of stuff. And then 4 years later, they came back and unsurprisingly figured it out.
Well, I don't think that's off topic at all, right? Because that is mindset, that is attitude, that is being willing to pass the ball and to give the limelight to other people to hold each other up and win as a team. That's a
Mm,
huge mindset shift for, for a lot of people. And,
mm,
I work with a lot of people in professional services, medical and other, and was just talking with somebody who similarly, my whole background is in accounting and worked in a
right.
corporate setting for 30 years and then went into speaking and coaching and some stuff, right? But all of those professional services, we like to, they kind of confer status. They're smart people or whatever we think they are, right? They got their degrees and they're whatever, but they don't learn a thing about business, not in
Mm,
school, not in their training, and they go out and because they're good at this one thing, they think therefore it's going to be easy to open a practice or open their business. But it's the same thing. Doesn't matter if you're in professional services. The same thing's true of plumbers, right? Of concrete layers. You know,
yep.
whatever any trade, any profession, whether it's baking pies, right, or being a neurosurgeon, running your business is a different skill set, and you
Mm.
kind of have to put on a different hat and maybe accept this is scary, accept that you're a novice at this thing, even when you're a master of the thing that you do.
How many people do we deal with who started off in a technical role and woke up one morning owning a business with 10, 15, 20, 100, 200 people? And they're like,
All of them.
what happened? One day I was doing what I was trained to do, and the next day I now run a business and don't do any of that.
Yeah, all of them. I mean, whether they're at 10 or 25 or 50 or 100 or whatever it is right now, essentially all of them. And when you go back to the drawing board, even if they've been doing it for 15 years, and you say, well, what did you know in the beginning? They're like, well, nothing,
Mm.
nothing. I discovered very quickly I was a novice at this and really didn't know anything and still don't know enough. So that, obviously that's where we get to come in and help them out. But yeah, it's a different skill set, it's a different mindset. And just because you're really good or really passionate about something, or you're really smart and got great grades or whatever, doesn't mean you already know how to run a business. So
Of course.
again, that mindset that you've had, one of the mindset items was humility,
Yeah,
right?
100%.
So what were the other things you had come up with? We have curiosity, openness,
There
resilience.
was curiosity, which there's a ton of stuff that falls under curiosity.
Mhm.
You can argue that a lot of humility comes under that. Being
Yeah.
experimental comes under that. You're curious to know what's sort of what will work and what won't. Openness, generally speaking, people who are curious are more open to new ideas, new ways of doing stuff, which is cool. If you are curious and you are used to doing stuff and trying stuff out, you will probably have a level of resilience because you'll probably fail at some stuff and you'll have to bounce back. Um,
Well,
and
you
the
get
other thing,
used to it, right?
I think, I think you do. I think it's people understand that it's a normal sort of path of the course when you're actually doing something. That a little bit of failure is a really healthy thing. Keeps you on track, keeps you focused on. You can't take your eye off the ball because the moment you do, poof, you're at the back door. Um, and
Can I
that
make a quick comment
ultimately.
on that one?
Sorry, say that again.
I just want to make a quick comment on that
Sure.
because again, particularly the people with a lot of education and advanced degrees and that kind of stuff. If you stop to think about failing, making mistakes in school, it's highly discouraged, right? And what's collaboration called, Matt? If you were in school,
Yeah. Totally. Yeah. Yep. I know exactly what you mean.
say it.
100%.
It's
It's playing
cheating.
together, isn't
Yeah. Well, but collaboration in school, if you collaborate on an exam, you're cheating, right? You'll fail, you get
it?
kicked
Oh, I
out.
see what you're saying. Yeah.
Yeah, you're totally, so in other words, they're conditioned sometimes for as many as 20 plus years from kindergarten through their advanced degrees, right? To be right and do it by themselves. And if that's
Yeah.
the mindset and the training that you've had for 2 decades as a young adult, there there's just such a desperate need to shift that
Mm.
mindset. The moment you graduate, the moment you're out there, the rest of life is a team sport.
Life is a team sport. Yeah, absolutely. Cool, mate. It's good chatting with you.
You too, you too. Awesome topic. I hope folks got a little bit out of this, and we hope to see you over at the best small business in the world.com.
Talk to you soon.